our next speaker. At his most recent, it seems like not just the most recent, but at his most recent Thanksgiving, they had 90 people. I want to know how they all fit in the same room, or if you didn't have them in the same room, in the same house, whatever. I want to know the secrets to this. So everyone please welcome Bill.
So LLMs, from hype to value. It's been awesome opportunities, but also some underwhelming results. And at the start of any new LLM initiative, predicting what will be successful and actually deliver upon the value has been a huge struggle. And that's sort of the genesis of this talk here. How to build intuitions as to why there is a quality variance, and what are some tools in our toolbox to be able to assess the effectiveness of these large language models. Allie, hopefully you'll enjoy this one. We're really in the early innings, incredibly. And hopefully to drive that point forward, today has been 1,000 days since ChatGPT came to market. So, but what does that really mean? So if we look at that through the lens of e-commerce, Amazon launched in July of 1995. So if we fast forward that 1,000 days, it'll be April of 1998. So April 1998 means it's 8 years before AWS comes to market. There's no online banking. We're really in the early innings. Quick show of hands in the room. Who here has used an LLM and had very underwhelming results? Cool. Looks like most. All right. There's many drivers behind that. Part of that is we're deep, deep, deep into a hype cycle. And there's a lot of headlines out there today that are talking about disillusionment. It's all part of the hype industrial complex. Hopefully today we'll come out of this discussion with some more intuitions and evaluations of how we can more effectively manage this. Some quick anecdotes of overwhelming and underwhelming. I was doing some coding. I had paragraphs that were embedded with names and addresses and some demographic information. So I wanted to use a Python library, NLTK, which I hadn't used in a while, but to do the named entity extraction. So this is the actual prompt. And what GPT came back to me with was, yeah, you could use NLTK. However, Spacey, a different library, gives better results. I was kind of blown away. I didn't ask it to do that. I tested it, and it was right. On the other side of the coin, some underwhelming results. A big thunderstorm rolls through my neighborhood, and this is one of the results. A tree a couple blocks away came down, but we were curious. How old is the tree? I could count it, but that seems kind of like drudgery. Maybe AI can help. So first, the baseline. The tree is actually 95 years old. It was planted in 1930. So we created one prompt. This is a picture. It has a cross-section of a large tree. Count the number of rings. One prompt, 3 LLMs, 6 answers. So Google Gemini gave it a range 75 to 95. Claude gave it a range of 45 to 50. And ChatGPT gave me 4 answers. And then asked me which one I prefer. So answer 95, range 45 to 160. While that tree went down, this normally very chill dog was cowering in my closet. That's ravioli. All right, so hopefully we've established that there's a big quality variance that exists with these large language models, but what are some of the intuitions there? You know, at least in a data science domain, over 2 decades, they've built up an intuition of what's viable, what's not, where you have to manage certain pieces. Those intuitions don't exist yet for me with large language models. But why does the quality variance exist? So 6 reasons, not a comprehensive list. We'll double click on the top 2, lossy models and scaled wisdom, which I'm referring to it as, and we'll briefly touch on the next 4. So LLMs, like all models, are lossy animals. If you think about building a base model, you might start with the common crawl, which is 10 terabytes of text data. Throw at that thousands of GPUs, a couple of weeks of training, a couple $1 million in cloud costs, and what can come out on the other side is 140 gigabytes of weights. At least that's the case with Llama 2, which has 70 billion parameters. So 10 terabytes in, 140 gigabytes out. You know, there's a ton of compression that's going on, and compression by nature is going to have lossy qualities to it. Reinforcement learning from human feedback. There's a lot of exciting things in this space. I think this, to me, is one of the more exciting. I tend to think of it as scaling wisdom in really like a global manner. So what is reinforcement learning from human feedback? These are probabilistic, stochastic models, which means one prompt will give many different answers. Here in this toy example, the prompt is, what's the best way to learn a new language? Run it 4 times, get 4 answers, use apps, immerse yourself, watch movies, read books. Then a human expert comes in and rank orders these answers. So in this case, immerse yourself is the top pick. That gets backfed into the training process, and that wisdom is baked into the model the next time it's trained. Why is this so important? Domains matter. The domains that the reinforcement learning is occurring on will drive the quality of the model significantly. And there's more than 700 standard industry codes, hundreds of majors and minors at universities, more than 100 federal government agencies. Which of these domains is the reinforcement learning occurring on? Don't really have a good read on that. And that is critical to matching your use case and what's being invested in, and which one you think might have better results. And many of these companies that provide these models are just starting to come out with domain-specific models. Ultimately, it's an alignment problem, right? Does your use case match where the reinforcement learning is being invested in? Some other drivers, just going to touch on real quick. Does the data or the documents that you're using, are they in a Gen AI friendly format? I've seen many times the documents are not, lots of repetition. Products that are hitting the market are immature, look great in a demo, but when the rubber hits the road, for lots of reasons, they don't deliver the value you seek. Prompting skills are not yet there with your users, and the quality metrics. It's just a very different animal than precision and recall. So what tools do we have available to us to do evaluations? 4 broad buckets. Human experts assessing the outputs, crowdsourcing. There's lots of websites that will do blind A/B tests, track the results, and produce a leaderboard. You can use one LLM to produce the results and a different LLM or a different prompt as an LLM judge. This is a good landmark paper about that, and we'll double click on that. And then broad industry benchmarks. The key thing I'd like you to take away from this, whichever approach you're going to use, there's a difference in the quality and the scale, hence the cost of what you can do with these. Benchmarks. Real brief. There's lots of benchmarks out there. Human eval, static eval, both coding oriented. One is the first one, human eval, is by OpenAI. static eval specific to JavaScript. There's a massive multitask language understanding that has hundreds of different domains that it covers. Many examples exist of benchmarks. Trade-offs. Scale is good, highly economical. They tend to be coding-oriented, not all, but many. Minuses, they're coding-oriented. There's a quality, or at least a perceived quality, that the LLMs might be tuned to the benchmark. And then you can reach saturation. If that tuning to the benchmark is occurring, it gets hard to differentiate at the top of the leaderboard. Crowdsourcing. There's a fabulous website called LM Arena. What LM Arena does is someone writes a prompt. The prompt is submitted blindly to a couple of different LLMs, and then the user ranks which one is better. Prompt, vote, advance AI is their tagline. Great scale. It's a highly active community, and it gives you a very easy first impression. Pluses, minuses. Do the questions that are happening in these environments align with your use cases? And as you talk and build a dialogue with these models, you can start to see their trends and tendencies of how they output. So you might actually, just by looking at the output, know which model that is. So that might challenge the blind nature of this. LM Arena has these 6 different categories that they produce leaderboards for, starting with text, down to text to image. You can see the rankings as of a few days ago. What struck me in looking at this slide amongst the 6 categories? There's nothing that's domain specific. So a lot of coding, a lot of text, a lot of web development. But if your use case is domain specific, how relevant will this be? Trade-off, scale, easy first impression. Talked about the minuses. So here's a pure anecdote. So please take that for what it is. But it's one of the prompts that was on one of these boards. Compose an engaging travel blog post about a recent trip to Hawaii and highlight these certain things. Is that relevant to your use case? Next, LLMs as judges. This is the landmark paper in which this occurred. Most vendors have their own versions of that, from OpenAI to Salesforce and a bunch in between. They scale nicely. You can vary granularity, which is nice. You can span models, which is nice. There's a cost involved because you're going to be inferencing a lot more. You have some scale, but you also have quality gaps because you're putting a lot of faith and trust in that LLM judge of what they believe this to be. We'll double click on this quickly. There's some key dimensions to consider as you structure your LLM as a judge if you choose to use it. You can set it up as an A/B testing mode, 2 answers, which one do you like better? You can try it with different models. You can have the LLM score the outputs, scale of 1 to 5. What's the quality of this answer? And the one I tend to like a lot is the bottom one, varied granularity. If you have a paragraph out, and let's say it has 4 sentences, you can have the LM judge each sentence individually. I tend to think of LLMs as an unbounded problem. It could be anything and everything. Who would think some knucklehead is going to ask the LLM to count the rings in a tree? But when you get it to more discrete granularities, it tend to get better results. So, okay. LM as a judge, a point-wise or direct scoring example. These are all toy examples, but summarize the key outcomes of the Apollo 11 mission. That's the input prompt. You get a 4-sentence narrative that describes the mission. In this one, it's landing on Mars, not the moon, in the second sentence. So we're going to take that output and input that into the judge LLM. And here's the judge prompt, scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is completely truthful. Number 1 is not truthful, and some shades in between. In this example, it got a score of 2 for the reasons just stated. It's Mars, not the moon. Second example is going to get into varying the granularity. Here we talk about health and benefits of exercise. We have 4 sentences. The third sentence is a little off topic. So we'll ask the LLM, the judge prompt, to evaluate each sentence in the output for its relevance to the user's question. Put the question in, put the output in. The prompt says that 1, 2, and 4 are all relevant. 3 is not relevant. It's more about strength training, not cardio. And then give it a score, 3 out of 4. Last one is a human expert. Human expert can be awesome for a lot of reasons, because if you have the right people at the table, they'll have a gold standard of what answers could look like. You have a common grading scale. What I really like about it is you're setting the stage for buy-in from your user community. They feel that they're part of the process. With the right people, you get to high-quality assessments. And you can use that in your org design to construct a core team that's going to own whatever use case or capability you're pushing forward. Trade-offs. It's really time-consuming. And often people who are doing this is their side hustle, not their day job. You need the relevant SMEs. Often their time is not so trivial to get, and it lacks a scale. So lastly, some better practices. As you look at a set of use cases, pick your domain carefully. There's a ton of investment within the space into programming, voice, call center. Those seem to be more mature. Others, not nearly as much. So align your evaluation approach with the domain of your use case. Intuitions. For me, I think it's critical to be effective here, to have a decent intuition, and to spread that out amongst your teams. What I like to do with my team, if it's an hour status call, start out with 2 minutes and ask everyone to describe briefly how they're using an LLM in their personal life. Evaluate early. It is often that the demo looks so cool and so good, and at times it doesn't match the reality. So what I'm toying with is there a step in between? Can we do a hands-on evaluation with the vendor? Would they be open to that before we have to go through all of our governance hurdles? Alignment of evaluation approach with your specific use case. LLM is a judge when it makes sense. I've had good success with varying the granularities. Human experts, pick and choose wisely when to lean into human experts. That's it. Thank you all.